the item highlighted, we'll click R, and it's going to rotate about the current view. So this is where it's really important to make use of these views here. To get that kind of perfect rotation, you're going to want to try to use this XYZ button here. And one other thing that I'm going to also recommend is if you go to this Object tab after it's selected, let's go ahead and change to 3-2-1 rotation, so ZYX Euler, before we do any rotations. It's just a kind of a good thing to do because that's the rotation that X-plane wants, is 3-2-1. So now I'm going to click R. It's going to change my cursor to this kind of rotation cursor. And you'll see it doesn't really matter where I move it, but we're just rotating about this axis. So now let's kind of line this up here about right. But it's not long enough, right? We need to get this scaled. So S can now scale the size. So we're basically just trying to get this point to the other side just to kind of give us a better idea of the location. We'll go R again just to kind of tune this. Let's just take a look at it. We can just kind of see, does this look pretty good on this axis? I think so. So yeah, so that's pretty good. That rotation axis looks good to me. So now that we're happy with this rotation, I'm going to get out of the wireframe, go back to this kind of shaded view. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click on the control surface, shift click on the armature. So now they're both selected. We're going to right click parent object. So this is basically binding the objects together. So now we're actually ready to animate. So at the bottom here, you'll see that there's this little bar that's come up. So let's drag this up a little bit. This is our animation bar. We're going to start at 0. We're going to end at 180. All right. And I'll explain why in a minute. So let's park this at 90. 90 is our middle ground. So I'm going to click on the armature that we want to rotate, and there's a kind of a couple of keystrokes we're going to do that'll help to get this animated properly. First off, it is important, again, I can't stress it enough, make sure you do ZYX Euler, because if you do have that incorrect, when you get into X-plane, you might get some wonky rotations. You may have seen Ben, I was telling you that there were some odd rotations going on. That was because of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the armature. We're going to click R, V, V. So what that's going to do is it'll get you into rotation, and then it's going to go through 2 axes, and it'll line up the axis. We'll type in the rotation we want. Since we're at neutral, we'll say 0, enter. What this has done is it's now set it to a 0-degree rotation, which should do nothing. Now we'll click I, rotation. So what you'll see is after doing that, this has turned yellow. We've now locked in a keyframe at 0. So this is what it believes the neutral position is. We'll then drag this to 0, R, Z, Z, and let's do 90. Enter, I, rotation. So now we've got another keyframe, and now you can see we have some movement going on here. Let's go to the other end. R, Z, Z, negative 9D, enter, I, click rotation, and now we have the full throw of it. And so, for example, with the Raven, maybe you want to go past 90, perfectly fine. Instead of 90, type 120 or negative 120. And so that'll basically just get you to those limits. So what you may notice is you may find that if you go past 90, it may do some weird interpolation between the two. So you may have to add an intermediate point, let's say at 45, where you do RZZ 45, enter, or 60, for example, if you want to go 120. So you can add intermediate points if you'd like to, if you find that the animation isn't smooth enough as it currently is. So now that we have this animated, at this point, we're actually effectively done with one animation. And so let's go ahead and put the other objects back. And I'm actually just going to hide the armature itself now. And now what we can do is we can play this through so you can kind of see how the animation will look, in the actual environment. So there's your animation. Now let's also do a propeller. So again, we would do this exact same process for these flaperons and the rudder. But let's do a propeller because it's slightly different. So let's go, I'm going to go ahead and hide everything again. And so now let's go to this propeller. Let's do Shift A, armature. So it's already positioned it just about perfectly right in the center of it. So that's good, but it does need to be rotated. So let's rotate this. So again, it's R to rotate. And we're going to get that rotated about here. It should be basically 90. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 90. So notice now I've made a mistake. This should be Z, Y, X, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so 3, 2, 1 rotation. It did not change anything, fortunately, but Z, 3, 2, 1 rotation. Okay, so let's get this lined up here. Again, start with what you want to animate. Shift click the armature, right click parent object. Now they're binded together. We'll now click on the armature. Once again, R, Z, Z, 0, enter, I, rotation. Again, this is turned yellow. Let's go at 45-degree angles this time. So I'm going to go to 45, R, Z, Z, 90, enter, I, rotation. I'm going to scoot it over all the way to 0. We're going to go 90 more degrees. So we'll do R, apologize, let's do this again. R, Z, Z, 90, enter, I, rotation. So what that's done is it rotates from where it previously was. So that's why I was doing 90. So there's the first 90. There's the second 90. Okay, so that's half of a propeller rotation. Now let's go the other way. So we'll start from here. Let's go to 135. R, Z, Z, negative 9D, enter. I, rotation. One more time. R, Z, Z, negative 9D, enter. I, rotation. So now we've got a full propeller rotation. And you can just make sure that it's properly rotating, which in this case it is. So now we can go back to fixed components. We can re-show this. And so now we've got these two things animated. Okay. So I think this is something that probably should be standardized, because now we're going to get to the kind of getting into X-Plane, which is now let's just assume that you're happy, you've got your animations done, and you're ready to go. So everything's good to go. You're ready to get to X-Plane. So in your folder, there's an Excel document that I've made, which I believe this needs to be probably open access to everyone that ever wants to use this, just because it's something that people could figure it out on their own, but you're just going to be kind of reinventing the wheel. So this is a list of 38 data refs, and what data refs are in X-Plane environment are effectively animation things or tools that you can use to animate things. And so this is a list of 38 data refs, which are predetermined to be usable data refs, because some of them, if you overwrite them, X-Plane gets mad, effectively. So these are useful data refs. So basically you can animate up to 38 things. And if there was a need for more, I guess someone would probably need to sit down and look through the data refs and see what else that they could assign. But ultimately that's where we're at. So these 38 data refs are completely usable. You would then come in and you would assign these to whatever you would like to use. So in this case, we did the elevator and we did RPM. And so what I'll do here is I'm going to take a look at the name of this data ref. So I'm going to take it. Let's go ahead and copy this name. So now what I'll do is I'm going to select on the armature of the elevator. And now here under, I believe it's object, but I want to make sure it's not, yeah, it is, it's object. So under object, where we had this transform show up with the yellow, you'll notice now once you have this plugin, you'll see X-plane here. So we're going to go ahead and open this, drop down X-plane. And here we're going to say, again, we're selected on this armature. We're going to go ahead and add a data ref. And so I'm going to paste in that name that I had before. And so this is where you're actually telling X-plane what the animation is. So in this case, we're going to go through these keyframes that we have, and this is kind of where your sign convention matters. So the sign convention that I use is positive trailing edge down or positive trailing edge right. And so at 0, we're going to go ahead and say that this is 0. We're going to add a keyframe. So we'll add a keyframe, it'll turn yellow, meaning that it's accepted it just like it did here. We'll see that this is a downward rotation. So this is rotating down. So down at 0, I'm going to call this positive 90 degrees. And we're going to add a keyframe. So this is a positive 90 degrees downward, maybe difficult to see, but that would be our positive 90. Then up, an upward rotation of 90 degrees would be negative 90. So it's orange, you clicked add keyframe, now it's going to be yellow. So now it has accepted these keyframes. So that is the elevator completely animated now. We'll do the same thing with the propeller. Again, this is kind of where sign convention matters. Looking at this propeller, it looks like it's going to be chopping left. So let's select that armature for the propeller, or just the propeller itself, I suppose. Although I prefer click the armature. So the armature, this would be positive rotation, okay? And it's in degrees. So let's say that this would be 0. So again, let's go to X-plane, add data ref. We would then look at our list. I've assigned this to RPM. We'll copy that. We'll do add data ref, paste. This is 0, so we'll add a keyframe.